The Sprint 6C was born in a particular period for Alfa Romeo. First of all, the state management, which invests little and appreciates the jewel in its hand. In addition, a continuous churning out of ideas and projects, to bring the brand back to the position it deserves. Projects developed by men who care about the brand they work for. Among these, the president Ettore Masachisi, and the engineer Carlo Chitti. From the common intent of these two men, comes the idea of the Sprint 6C. The ultimate goal is to bring Alfa Romeo to the top in the only race field in which the RSA house had never won. In fact, although Alfa had victories in various track championships, in its Palmares, it had never achieved significant results in rallying, and the new regulation for Gr.B opened up new possibilities. Because it left the field open to design, and only required the construction of at least 200 units of the car to be homologated. Launch and Audi were the first manufacturers to aim for the new championship. Peugeot, Renault, Ford followed shortly, while other manufacturers, such as Austin Rover, Porsche, Citroën will arrive later. Masachisi wants Alfa to participate, and does not hide the fact that it is the protagonist. The idea is supported by Carlo Chitti, brilliant mind of Auto Delta, the racing department of Alfa, who is entrusted with the development of the model. At the end of 1980, the key points of the project begin to be outlined. A compact and manageable, powerful and reliable car. It must have an aesthetic that refers to the production model. Therefore, the creation of a pure prototype, such as the Lancia 037, is excluded, and the Renault 5 Turbo is followed, a mid-engine car that retains its original somatic characteristics. Initially, we start from the little one of the brand, the Alfasud. In a few months, we arrive at a first prototype which, at the end of 1981, was also tested on the road by the test driver, Gigio Francia, but in RSA, they think that, since Alfasud is at the end of his career, it is necessary to use a base that guarantees commercial returns. The Arna, close to presentation, is taken into consideration. But the idea was immediately rejected. It remains a popular sports model, which will soon undergo a restyling, the Alfasud Sprint. Once the base has been decided, it remains to choose the mechanicals. As for the engine, we initially think of a supercharged boxer engine, or the four-cylinder of the Alfetta GTV Turbo Delta, given that Alfa was experimenting with the use of the turbo, both on the road and in Formula One. But for greater reliability and image, Chitti prefers the new V6, designed by Busso. At the Auto Delta headquarters, in Settimo Milanese, the project begins. The design of the Sprint 6C is entrusted to Zagato, which also takes care of the construction of the bodywork. But, it seems that Bertoni was also initially contacted, and it seems that some details of the final version come precisely from the proposal that came from Grugliasco. In September 1982, the first official photos were released, taken in the setting of the Monza racetrack. The Zagato Alfa Romeo union, as a tradition, takes the form of a car with an aggressive aesthetic. The well-known design of the Alfasud Sprint is not upset. The aesthetic modifications, created for a precise mechanical purpose, are made with style, and integrate perfectly with the original design. The front shows the four-headlight grille, which will later be mounted on the restyled 1983 Sprint. The Alfa shield is colored black. The plastic front bumper integrates a conspicuous spoiler, and two rectangular air intakes. On the sides, it connects with the widened wheel arches. These are widely rounded to accommodate, especially in racing, tires of different types and sizes. The front and rear wheel arches are joined by a side skirt, with a linear and modern design. The rear of the car is the section that undergoes the most changes. The bumper takes up the style of the front one. In the lower part, in the center, it has a slight flare, to accommodate the exhaust terminal, with a very refined and original design. On the sides, it has showy widenings that connect to the terminal part of the voluminous wheel arches. The optical groups are unpublished, and will also be seen in the 1983 Sprint. The tail panel ends with a spoiler, with a design dictated by precise technical requirements. It has aerodynamic purposes, to give downforce, and therefore more grip and traction. It also has mechanical purposes. On the forward side, it houses two air intakes, that are used for engine intake. On the back, a horizontal striped decal, with the Sprint 6C lettering and the Alfa Romeo emblem. The tailgate is that of the standard Sprint, is painted in matte black, and houses a vertical fin profile, typical of many supercars of the 1970s, which covers the rear window. The handles and locks are colored in matte black. The rear view mirrors are typically racing, with an aerodynamic shell and thin support. The beautiful alloy wheels, with inverted channel, are provided by the Speedline, and have a two-tone color, golden on the inside, aluminum on the outer edge. The integral painting gives aggression to the whole. The color choice is a racing red, in a brighter shade than the usual Alfa red. The first glance denotes a search for detail and accuracy of assembly, and this testifies to how much Alfa Romeo believed in the creation of the Sprint 6C. Noteworthy are the beautiful sports seats, in black leather, with particular headrests, with mesh interior, already seen on the Giulietta Turbo Delta, and which will be fitted to the latest version of the GT V6. The carpet, colored in red, is very neat. In the center of the seats, a voluminous tunnel, covered in black leather, houses the gear lever, 2 buttons and 2 air vents. The dashboard is renewed, and will be reproposed on the Sprint restyling of 1983. It has a modern and rational design. The steering wheel is the same one that will be mounted on the 1984 Ferrari Testarossa. The instrumentation, with red graphics, is sparse for a sports car. Curiously, it has the full scale of the speedometer, set at 200 km per hour, when the declared maximum speed is higher. All details are taken care of, including the door panel. Behind the seats, the firewall covered in sound-absorbing material, and, in the upper part, a crystal, isolate the passenger compartment. A plastic shell acts as an engine hood. The V6, designed by Busso, is a modern engine, entirely made of light alloy, with excellent performance and, still today, considered one of the best V6 ever. It is a 60 degrees V6 cylinder. The displacement is 2,492 cc. 2 valves per cylinder, arranged at 45 degrees, and sodium-cooled. Hemispherical combustion chambers. Optimized ducts. The power supply is entrusted to a Bosch Algetronic system, very advanced for the period. The declared power and torque values are remarkable: 160 horsepower at 5,800 revolutions per minute, and 23 kilograms at 4,000 revolutions per minute. The engine is mounted longitudinally, in the central rear position. The cooling is entrusted to an oversized radiator, mounted on the front, and assisted by 2 large fans. The 5-speed ZF5DS25-2 gearbox is mounted longitudinally, at the rear of the car. It is the same one adopted by the Lancia Rally 037, and by the De Tomaso Pantera. The braking system is enhanced, and equipped with 4 large self-ventilating discs. The suspension system sees the front that uses the Sprint's McPherson scheme, revised in the adjustments and components. At the rear, an independent subframe, with transverse parallelogram suspension. Kone-specific shock absorbers. The 7-inch X15 Speedline reverse-channel split rims fit Pirelli P7 200/550 VR15 tires. The length is just over 4 meters, the width 1.70 meters, and the height of 1.29 meter. The wheelbase measures 245 centimeters. The weight of the car is limited to 990 kilograms. The declared performances are very high. The maximum speed is 215 km per hour, and the kilometer from standstill takes 27.3 seconds. At the same time, a second unit, with the specifications for the race pace, was developed. Aesthetically, the front bumper changes, which has a more pronounced spoiler, and 2 fog lights housed in the lower part. The shield on the grille is chromed. The tail also changes. The tailgate is completely new. It is larger, hinged much further on the roof. Made of resin, it integrates showy slits that cover the rear window, more aerodynamic, but less aesthetically successful than the first variant. The shape of the rear spoiler also changes, now divided into 2 parts. The first, integral with the tailgate, covers the second, inserted in the rear panel. The decal with the word Sprint 6C disappears, but the Alfa emblem appears in a special flare on the rear panel. Under the seat of the license plate, an air extractor appears, behind which the gearbox oil radiator is hidden. The shape of the rear bumper varies, which now houses 2 rear fog lights and 2 seats for the renewed exhaust system. The rear side windows are in plexiglass to reduce weight. Different alloy wheels, wider and with round holes. The handles are now the same as those of the standard Sprint, with chrome button. The rear view mirror also changes, identical to that of the 1983 Sprint. Aesthetically, the second prototype appears more refined, closer to production, while internally, it is leaner, confirming its racing destination. Dashboard and instrumentation are the same as the first car. The steering wheel is new, a Momo, with a racing design. The racing seats are equipped with 4-point seatbelts. The beautiful red carpet disappears, and gives way to a less refined black one. The gear lever is different, the same as that of the Lancia Rally 037. The central leather tunnel disappears, but the underlying sheet metal tunnel remains, prepared for the passage of the transmission shaft, for a possible four-wheel drive version. The door panels are less finished, and white in color. Although this variant was probably made during the restoration. The only mechanical changes concern the double wishbone front suspension, the exhaust system, with 2 single outputs, and the wheels, with wider rims, and 225/50 VR15 rear tires. It seems that the engine, thanks to a particular tuning, had about 170 horsepower, but it is not certain. The first version, known as Prototype 1, was presented to the public at the Paris Motor Show in October 1982. It enjoyed considerable success, which bodes well for the go-ahead for production. While Autodelta is working on developments for a definitive version, and in anticipation of the races, the scenarios change. In Alfa Romeo, the situation has worsened. The financial crisis is leading the company towards economic collapse. The first rumors of sale are circulating. With these premises, it is impossible to raise the funds even for the homologation of the car alone, and it is preferable to direct investments on the design of future models. At the same time, in the sports field, the continuous evolution of the Group B models makes the 6C uncompetitive, even before the resolution. If the main objective of the project vanishes, Autodelta still plans to develop the car both for a limited series production, and for the creation of a promotional championship on European tracks. The Sprint 6C project is definitively shelved when, after the first serious accidents, increasingly fierce criticism grows against Gr.B, whose fate is marked, after the fatal accident of Toivonen and Cresto. The 2 prototypes are returned to the RSA Museum. Prototype 1 is forgotten in the basement of the museum. Prototype 2 is exhibited. In 1986, the year of the acquisition of Alfa by Fiat, Prototype 2 was made operational, to show it to Vittorio Gadella, then CEO of the Touring Company. At Autodelta, they hope that the goodness of the car will convince Gadella, a passionate and profound connoisseur of sports cars, to give the green light to production. It seems that Gadella enjoyed the car very much, but shortly after, he was ousted, and with him, the only chance to see this splendid car built. Since then, the second specimen has had its space at the RSA Museum. It was restored in the mid-2000s, and has often been shown at various events ever since. Traces of Prototype 1 had been lost, and this fact, combined with the very limited availability of information on the Sprint 6C, made us think that the second prototype was simply a rearrangement of the first. But the testimonies of those who worked on Autodelta, and those of Zagato herself, confirmed the existence of 2 Sprint 6C. And in the mid-2000s, the first version was found, completely dusty, in the cellars of RSA. The Sprint 6C is one of the many testimonies of the passion of the Alfa Romeo men of those years, who managed to create extraordinary cars, despite the few resources available. But it is also one of the latest achievements of an unrepeatable period for ideas and experiments, not only in the automotive field, but in the entire Italian industrial and production sector.